Tonight in our cineclub, Piccolo Cineclub Tirreno in Follonica, we'll watch your movie, The Look of Silence, winner of Grand Jury Prize at the last Venice Film Festival. Could you tell us something about your film, if it's possible? We'll hear your words as a sort of presentation before your film.
Sure. Well, The Look of Silence is the companion piece to my first film that I made, The Act of Killing. The two films complete each other, if you like. It doesn't matter which one you see first, but the two films form a bigger work whose whole, I hope, is greater than the sum of the parts. The two films were made over a period of 10 years, so it's a very big part of my life that I've spent making these two films. And both of them explore the legacy, the present-day consequences of the 1965-66 genocide in Indonesia. In 1965, somewhere between 500,000 and 2.5 million alleged communists, anyone on the left, was accused of being a possible communist and was killed within 6 months when the Indonesian military overthrew the government and installed a right-wing military dictatorship. And the perpetrators of that genocide have remained in power ever since. And in many ways, these two films are not exploring what happened in 1965. They are not historical documentaries about what happened in the past. They are films about the present, about what are the consequences of this incredible, horrific impunity. The first film, The Act of Killing, is a film about escapism, storytelling, and guilt, the lies the perpetrators tell themselves so that they can live with what they've done. And in it, a group of death squad leaders dramatize their fantasies and self-deceptions, delusions about the killings in the styles of their favorite Hollywood movies, as a way of understanding how the ruling regime has justified its action and the incredible corruption that this has caused in the society. That's the first film. It's a film about escapism and guilt. It's a kind of bizarre, surreal fever dream of a film. And this second film, The Look of Silence, follows one family of survivors, and particularly one son who was born after the killings, who tries to find out how his brother was murdered, and he travels as an optometrist door to door, meeting the men who killed his brother, men who are still in power, trying to confront them to see if they can take responsibility for what they've done, in the hope that if they can acknowledge what they've done, then he and his family will finally be able to have reconciliation and live side by side with the perpetrators as human beings instead of as killer and victim. And that process ends with great disappointment for him, but through this film itself, an unprecedented dialogue inside Indonesia has begun to take place.
Okay, thank you. And can I make two questions, Joshua? What kind of relationship did you develop with the main character of this second film, Look of Silence?
Adi Rukun, the main character in the Look of Silence, is like family to me. We met in 2003 when I began this work. I was focused at that time still on the survivors. Adi was at the center of that effort, trying to gather survivors together to tell me their stories. The army threatened the survivors quickly in 2003 not to participate in the film, and it was Adi above all who said, "Joshua, don't give up. Try to film the perpetrators." I was afraid to do that at first, but when I did, I found they were open and boastful. I spent 7 years exploring that boastfulness, making The Act of Killing, and the early material in The Look of Silence that you'll see Adi watching. And throughout that 7 years, Adi would watch everything I had time to show him. So when I went back to make The Look of Silence in 2012, after editing The Act of Killing, but before it had its first public screening, at which point I knew I could no longer safely return, Adi was like was a very dear friend of mine, and I did not know at that point that he would be the main character of the film, but I knew that he would be my main collaborator. So it was Adi who pushed me to confront the perpetrators. It was Adi who said he wanted to do that, and I initially said absolutely not. It's too dangerous. I've never seen a film in the history of documentary where survivors confront perpetrators while the perpetrators are still in power. And it's never happened in the history of Indonesia that a survivor has confronted perpetrators in this way. But Adi explained to me why he wanted to do it, and we found a way that we could do it safely. But all the time, although I'm the director of this film, you could say Adi is truly the protagonist in the sense that he was the one taking the decisions that led us on this journey.
Okay. And is it the danger? Is it been dangerous realize this film?
I think we were in a lot of physical danger while making this film. People often would ask me about the act of killing. Weren't you afraid making it because you're close to such powerful perpetrators? And I come to realize, strangely, no, I wasn't really afraid making the act of killing physically. I was afraid emotionally. This film, we were constantly afraid physically, particularly once we started filming these confrontations. But even when I was just filming Adi and his family's daily life, the survivors' families are always being monitored by the government. They're always under pressure. And so we were always looking over our shoulders. And once Adi decided to confront the perpetrators, we were really cautious. We would have his whole family at the airport ready to evacuate from that region and Indonesia as a whole, if necessary, in case anything went wrong. We would always film with 2 cars so that it would be harder for them to follow us, 2 identical cars, so it would be harder for them to follow us if we should need to run away. We were afraid the whole time, and then after Adi explained what he wanted to do to his family, the family saw the first confrontation that we filmed with a man who was relatively low-ranking, Inong, the man who you'll see in the film where Adi's testing his eyes with bright red glasses. The very opening image of the film, in fact, is Inong. We confronted him first because he was low-ranking and couldn't cause much danger. Then Adi showed that scene to his family and said, "What do you think about this? Should I continue?" The family felt he should continue. But we knew then that if we were to release this film, the family would have to evacuate to another part of Indonesia, at least into a safer space. We tried to turn that into an opportunity for the family by putting them, getting the kids into much better schools, getting the family away from these men who've terrorized them for so many decades, into a community that's supportive and appreciative of the really heroic, I think, and courageous work that Adi's done. But it is also a sign of how far Indonesia still has to go before it becomes the democracy that it claims to be, that Adi and his family should actually have to run away like fugitives, when in fact all Adi's trying to do through confronting the perpetrators is to create the preconditions for reconciliation.
Okay. Joshua, thank you for everything. It has been an honor to speak with you, and good luck for your next works. Could you tell us something about your next project?
Very, very little. All I can say is that you should expect something wild, surreal, strange, and it's not taking place in Indonesia. And it'll be a while. My films these 2 films took me 10 years. I hope it doesn't take another 10 years, but it'll take a while.
Okay. Thank you.
And thank you so much, and have a good evening, Florence. Or are we in Florence? Near Florence.
Near Florence. Near Florence.
Are you in Tuscany?
In Follonica. Near Florence.
Have a very good evening, Italy, let's say.
Okay. Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Good night.